Maureen Baker here from the studio on the pond in Chelmsford, Massachusetts. And I have to tell you, it got chilly out there again. Yes, it did. It got chilly out there again. So, what better way to warm the spirit than let's paint the seashore? Yep, I love painting the seashore. So, I'm going to flip it down and we're going to paint some seashores. And today we're going to focus on detailing the rocks. I'm hoping that we're still live. Yep, we're still live. We're going to focus on detailing the rocks. And we're going to have fun. Okay, so I'm going to flip this. Got to see what I'm painting. Yep, this is on the this is my reference photo. All right, and this is on the coast of New Hampshire. Yes, it is. And we're going to pull out some raw umber and some raw umber, and we're going to pull out some warm white. That's what we're, all right. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put out 2 puddles of raw umber, 3 puddles of raw umber. Yeah, I should make up my mind here, huh? And we're going to have dark, medium, and light. All right. And when we apply them, we'll have lots of other values. All right. So we're going to mix raw umber with ultramarine blue. And we're going to mix that 1-to-1. Yeah, I need a palette knife. I do need a palette knife, but I don't think it's a good idea mixing it with my finger. There we go. And that's going to make a really dark, dark color, okay? And we're going to need some of those darks in there. Then I'm going to clean off that. I do. And then we're going to have a puddle of raw umber. Put out raw umber, yeah. And then we're going to mix a puddle, and it's going to have a little bit more white in it than it does raw umber, okay? And that's going to be, so we have dark, medium dark. This is going to be medium. And you're going to mix in a little more raw umber there. And then we're going to have warm white, okay? These are Deco Art Traditions colors. They're beautiful pigmented color. And you can get them on my website. And I will put that up there at the end of the video. I'd love to have your comments. Yep, if you can share, comment, and like, I'd really appreciate it. And I will load this up to my YouTube channel too. So we're going to start, and we're going to start to bring in these rocks over here. And I'm going to bring those in with straight raw umber. Yeah. These rocks over here I'm going to bring in with straight raw umber. They're a little bit darker. And remember, the direction in which we paint is going to help create the form. Yes, it is. All right. And they're going to come down like that. I decided as I was looking at this, I'm going to go into my medium light. And I'm going to bring in some medium light too. All right. Going to go into some really dark. And we're going to bring in some dark, dark areas. There we go. And it's loose. I'm painting pretty loose. The rocks on the outside edge are a little bit more jagged than the rocks in. And we can add a little bit of light to the top of that. This edge right here, I kind of want to have that edge a really hard edge. And it comes down, yeah, and that's turning a little bit gray. which is granite. This is New England. All right, and we're going to bring in some more. And I am mixing the paint as I go, so it's not all one color. There we go. The darkest edges are going to be towards the sun, and they're not perfect. All right. Yeah, I'm going to bring some of this in. Oh, that's a little light. Not worrying. I'm going to bring in some raw umber. There. Look at that. All right. I am working with acrylic. Okay. So it dries pretty quick. And even though it's winter, the air is pretty dry right now. I'm going to bring this at an angle. Painting at an angle helps to create the form. There we go. All right. And we're still in a pretty rough stage. All right. We're still in a pretty rough stage. Hi, Yvonne. How are you, dear? All right. On this edge in here, I'm going to bring in some of that real dark color. All right. And we're going to angle this up a little bit. Here we go. Some of that real dark color. And then I'm going to bring in some medium in here. Now, I just created another edge right there. Right here, I just created another edge, which is what these rocks do. Okay. On the very top, I'm going to go and put a top on this rock. Down the side, I'm going to lighten that up a little bit. And look at that. See how that starts to form? Oh, didn't want to do that. That's all right. I'm not worrying. I'm just going to fix it. Okay. Into some burnt umber. Raw umber, I'm sorry. All righty. Then on these edges, I'm going to go with some real light here. This is against the sun. There we go. And I don't want this to be exact. In other words, I don't want that to have a really straight line. There we go. And so we're going to give it a little edge there. There. On the back side of this, I'm going to put in some light, and then I'm going to put in a little bit of this mix that I made, this dark mix, because when I mix it with the light, it gets grayer. And that's really what I'm looking for. And on the front side of it, with a little bit more, there we go. All right. This edge right here is going to be a little bit light. The edge on the top is going to be super light. So we're going to go all the way to warm white. Down here, we're going to bring it in and we're going to streak it because it's not going to be perfect. On top of there being some form, we're trying to create form in these rocks. We're also trying to create texture. Okay. There we go. All right. Right in here, we're going to put in some real darks and it's not going to happen. All right. There we go. And that's going to give that an edge. And the edge is not perfect. All right. Let's see if this is going to work for me. Here we go. I know. Australia time. It's got to be like 4 in the morning there, dear. Right on this edge, I'm going to mix up some more of the dark. And that's done with raw umber and ultramarine blue. And it's just going to make almost a black. The more blue that you put in it, the cooler it's going to be. The more burnt brown you put in it, the warmer it's going to be. I like it to be a little cool. There. All right. Look at that. We're moving right along here. Go into this really dark. And right at the bottom, we're going to put in some real dark. There. See that? There we go. Right into the bottom. 7:30 on Tuesday. I know. All right. And then we're going to put in, right in here, we're going to put in some more of this dark. And I'm going to go into some brown. All right. By flicking it up like that, you're helping to create an extra edge. All right. Yeah. And I just put some raw umber in there. That's going to make it even darker. On the top, I can go into this mix. No, this is a side to this. I got a little lost there. That's all right. There we go. And I use a lot of paper towels. Okay. You don't worry about making a mistake. You just have to have faith that you'll be able to fix it, and you can. And the less you worry, the better your painting's going to be. There we go. Look at that. All right. There we go. So the form is created by the different lights and darks. Some of those lights and darks are created by the sun. Some of them it's the way the rocks are being hit by the sea. Some of it is created by just the material that the rocks are made of. All right. I think that we're going to let that dry out for a little while. Move on to another area. All right. And then down in here, we're going to put in some of this dark in a varied way. There we go. Look at that. See that? Just like that. And then right up in here, we're going to bring in a light. On the side, we're going to bring in this dark and some more brown. There. Chisel edge of my brush. There. I'm using quite a bit of paint. I'm not skimpy with the paint in this process. And it's messy. Think about the waves crashing on these rocks. That makes a mess. And we want to get different variations in the texture of the rocks, and also in the sides, in the creating the actual side of the rock. And we're going to do that with color and brush strokes and the direction in which you pull your brush. There. Then we're going to give this a little light on top. Whoop. There we go. pretty messy. Yeah, I think I'll go light right there. Ooh, that's really light. I don't know if I want to go that light. There we go. I think we'll go back in here. There, that's better. I like that better. And that's much closer to what's there. Bring in a little brown right there. Yeah. Then down in here, we're going to go in and we're going to bring in some lights. And they're not going to be perfect because the waves have been crashing on these rocks for years. Yeah. All right. Yeah, there are areas of the coastline of New Hampshire and Maine that are pretty rugged coastlines. They're not necessarily really high, but they're pretty rugged. Yes, they are. All right, back into my really dark. And we're going to come in here like this. There we go. And I'm going to come in like this. And I'm going to come in like this. The way I pull the stroke is helping to create the form of the rocks. All right, we're going to bring this up here. Like that. And we're going to come down like that. There. We are going to bring a little bit of this real dark into a few areas up in here. All right, I'm on the chisel edge of my brush. There we go. Back into my light. Into my warm white, which is very light. There we go. Look at that. All right. And I'm going to add some of this gray in here. Yeah. I do want to maintain that edge though. There. That's getting there. And you just, I think I'll work now in the, let this dry. No, I'm going to do a little bit more work down in here. Yeah, I have a dirty brush. It's pretty gray. We're going to bring in some of this. And then this and this. In here. Along with some of this. There. A little bit more brown on my palette. I'm bringing some more brown into the palette. Yeah, there we go. It's raw umber. This is the brown I'm bringing in. Then I'm going to bring in some of the mix, the light mix, over the brown. And it's going to, it's wet on wet, so it's going to give it nice texture. There we go. I'm really on the corner of my brush. That's what I am. Bringing in some grays. There, look at that. There we go. A little bit more dark, adding a little bit of brown to it just for a different coloring. There. And I got to tell you, when they sit and they set up, and the paint really sets up in them, they look just gorgeous. They will. They'll look gorgeous. In here, we're going to bring in a little bit of gray. Adding a little bit of warm white to that. There we go. And we do want to have a few areas that are a little bit on the, we want to create a dark in some of these areas so that it helps to create the form of the actual rock. So there's there's a couple of things going on here you got to remember, and that is that the sun, you have the shadowing, the natural shadowing that goes on, and then you have the sun beating on these rocks, which are also changing without any shadowing or anything. They're changing the rocks, coloring from the sun. All right. So you have the shading that's taking place of where the rock isn't really visible, and it's in shadow. And then you also have the fact that parts of these rocks are constantly exposed to the sun. So that's affecting the coloring of those rocks. And then other sides of the rocks are not exposed to the sun. So that affects the actual coloring of the rocks also. All right. So there's a couple of things going on here that we're working with. All right. And I do have a reference photo, even though I'm not, for this particular painting, I'm not trying to duplicate that reference photo exactly. All right. I think we need to get a little bit more light in here. There. And sometimes you put in a little too much light, and that's all right. You just bring the dark back in. There. There we go. And I think that we're at a point where I'm going to let it sit out and see what I really got. Before I do any more. All right. I think it's coming along nice. I don't think it's done. I do not think it's done. Yep, that's a gray that I just put in there. I want it to be tucked down a little bit. And then I'm going to put in a light right there with a little tiny bit of that gray showing through. All right. Now, I think while I'm at it here, I am going to work a little. Oh, I need to do this though. I'm going to bring in a little bit of gray right in here. There. There we go. All right, now I'm going to work a little bit now on the ocean area. Well, I'm going to bring in some sand. And there. All right, and I don't have a tremendous amount of paint on my brush. I'm going to do a couple of things here. There we go. Okay. I'm going to, bring in some sand. Now we're going to bring in a little bit of dark into the certain areas of the sand where the sand is wet. All right. I'm going to bring in some dark into where the sand is wet, and it's not perfect. There. Softening it out by lifting up on the pressure on my brush. And then I'm going to bring in some light areas to the sand up in here. Softening it out because when the waves come crashing in, it's not all even. All right. And I don't want it to be too brown. I want to make sure that we have some real... All right, I'm going to drop down a brush size. I'm going to drop down a few brush sizes because I want to just not undo some of the work that I got done on these rocks. There we go. There we go. Right against the rocks even, I am going to put in a little bit of dark. There. And it's nice and streaky. All right. Just smooth it out just a little bit. Clean brush. There we go. Gradual movement of value. There we go. There we go. There we go. Little bit of light, little bit of burnt umber. I'm sorry, raw umber. Keep calling it burnt umber. All right. There. Now we're gonna get a clean palette here. I am, and I'm gonna put out some white. And I'm going to put out some white. Okay, I'm hoping I didn't lose you. Oh, don't tell me I did. Here we go. I didn't lose you. Technology, you know, technology will keep us going. Yes, I did not lose you. All right, I'm trying to see if I can go like this. There we go. All right, I didn't lose you. All right, so we're going to go into warm white. All right, I am going to go into warm white. And we're going to barely touch down, all right? And we're going to just bring in some white. And we're going to I'm going to start in the back, all right? So right here, we're going to crash in some waves. All right, and we're going to start in the back. All right, as it comes in, there we go. And I use a little at a time. I bring in a little bit at a time. All right, and right here, we can bring in a wave just like that. Little bit on the top. Light touch, all right, as we come in to the shore. And way back here, we can also even bring in a little bit of a wave. There we go. Just a little bit of a wave. You can always add more, and you can take it off. It's easier to add it though than it is to take it off. There we go. And we're gonna add a little bit of variation here. There we go. There. Now I'm going to put out some ultramarine blue. And I am going to bring a little bit more blue in here. There we go. A little bit more blue into the water as it comes in to the shoreline. All right. You want the brown to come through because it's showing, it's very transparent, and that's what's underneath the water is the sand. Now, if you put in too much blue, we'll just go back in and we won't worry about it. Okay? All right. Now I want to remind everybody that I'm back on again on Thursday at 4 o'clock. You know, and I'm not always on time, but right around 4 o'clock. I'm going to go into some straight raw umber with some little bit of warm white in it. There. I got a little too blue. Don't like the shape of that wave. There we go. Yeah, I'm working with ultramarine blue. There we go, that's better. And raw umber. See? See how I don't worry about it? Worry, you know? And remember, painting is a great way to relax. That's why you shouldn't be worrying about it coming out perfectly. Doesn't need to come out perfectly right out of the gate. There you go. I think that's good. I think that's good enough that we're going to let that dry. I'm going to put in a little bit of, a little heavier in here. I'm tapping now to get some texture in it. Tap, 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 tap. Tap, 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 tap. There. There. Into the burnt, into the ultramarine blue, I can add a little bit of raw umber, not a lot, because I want it to be blue, and get a little bit of darks into the water. My brush was dirty, so I need to clean it off and do it again. A little bit of ultramarine blue, a little bit of raw umber. There. I had a little bit of white in there, so it wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. Didn't worry about it. Just fixed it. There we go. As it's coming in, I am going to put in a little bit of dark right in there. Bringing this blue in around the rocks. These rocks are above They're not coming to the shoreline. They're above the shoreline. I'm a little careful around the rocks. There. There. All right. Okay. So I think that we've come a long way today on this. This is a fun little piece. It's not a little piece. It's a little big. Bigger than I usually demo on. All right. And I'm going to let that all dry out. And we'll go into finish next week. Next Monday at 4 o'clock. Let me put this up here. Go like this. So I think it looks pretty good. Yeah, see? Yeah, I think it looks pretty good. I think it's coming right along. So next Monday at 4 o'clock, stop by, yeah, and I'd love to see you. All right, and remember, like, comment, and share. Thanks so much.